Hey, welcome back to the Friday show brought to you this week by Woodbine. It's a big weekend at Woodbine. Saturday's pair of graded stakes, the Ontario Colleen and the Hendry Stakes. Sunday, there's two graded stakes, the Connaught Cup and the Trillium. And the big race of the day is the Woodbine Oaks, along with a plate trial. Woodbine Oaks has been a precursor sometimes for the plate, which used to be the Queen's Plate. This year, the King's Plate to be run August 20.
Yeah, last year Moira came out of that one, won the Queen's Plate, now the King's Plate. So there's a little recent history there.
Phillies do well in the Queen's Plate, or we'll see how they do in the King's Plate. Anyways, I'm Ray Paulick, joined by Joe Nevills, bloodstock editor of the Paulick Report, and this week's guest is Jack Knowlton, the managing partner for Sackatoga Stables, which campaigned two really good horses, Tiz the Law and Funny Cide, who we're here to talk about today because of his recent passing. Jack, welcome to the Friday show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you. It's great to be on.
What's the last week been like for you? You're a busy guy up in Saratoga, and then you get the news on Funny Cide. I'm sure the outcry was pretty overwhelming.
It has been. 7:35 Sunday morning. My phone rings, and it's a horse park, and I get the word that he'd had a serious bout with colic the night before. They rushed him over to the equine hospital and tried to do surgery, but he just couldn't be saved. So it was a shock. I mean, I've seen him every year when I get down to Derby and go over to the horse park and, do a show. And this year they had him out. He was on the grass. He was nibbling grass. They had probably 50 people that with kids, and they were feeding them treats and getting pictures. So that was what he did. I mean, he was there 15 years, and best place in the world for a horse to be retired to, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I went and saw him last summer. It was the last time I got to see him in person at the horse park. And, he's a staple of the Hall of Champions tour. Like, he's one that, the public demanded to see him every time because, I mean, it's freaking Funny Cide. Like, you want to see him. So, he was very good at his job. He knew that he was a fan favorite, and, people came out to see him. It was really impressive.
No, it was. It's it's a big loss for the horse park. Obviously, we're saddened, but he had a good life, and he was on a racetrack for 6 years, and you can only do that if you're a good horse and you're a gelding, because that's pretty rare. And he ran credibly right up to the end. He's a 7-year-old and won his last race at Finger Lakes, kind of going back to the roots of the Sackatoga Stable folks.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who probably don't know the Sackatoga Stable story. Could you talk about who are the people involved in the beginning, and how it all came to be?
Okay, well, I'd be happy to do that. I come from a little town called Sackatoga up the eastern end of Lake Ontario, about 60 miles north of Syracuse, 30 miles from the Canadian border. Went to high school with 5 guys that was at a party, and I'd go up there, Memorial Day weekend, and beer and barbecue. I think the beer was talking. I had just finished 12 years in the standardbred business in Saratoga, and some of those guys had been down to the big track, and somebody said, "Well, why don't we buy a thoroughbred?" I said, "Well, I know a trainer." I happen to know Tim Kelly, actually, from drinking in the Horseshoe with Timmy now and then. And I said, everybody put in $5,000, and let's buy a horse. I figured that's the end, right? So a week later, one of the guys calls and says, "Well, we've talked about it, and we're in. We're going to do it." One of the fellows, a teacher, Mark Phillips, he didn't dare tell his wife, and he didn't for a long time. Another one, Harold Crane, who was a contractor. Harold said, "I'd be better burying that $5,000 in a tin can in my backyard and writing a check, but I'm going to do it." So lo and behold, they came in. We bought the first horse named Sackett 6 after the 6 of us, a $22,000 horse, and put our silks, our school colors, maroon and gray, and Sackatoga came from Sackett's Harbor and Saratoga. So it was all the homegrown stuff. Well, 8 horses, our 8th horse turns out to be Funny Cide. And by then we'd added 4 additional partners. But, we were hoping to have a New York-bred that could run at Saratoga and maybe win a race at Saratoga. I mean, that was the ceiling that we had. And, what turned it all around is when Barkley Tagg became our trainer, and Tim Kelly was having a tough time, and our two horses weren't running very good. And the infamous Gus Williams, back in the day, the older guy with the flamboyant sport coat that we all grew to love. Gus talked to me and said, we got to change something or we're not going to keep doing this. So I made 3 phone calls, and fortunately for me, Barkley answered and had a couple of stalls available. And Gus and I went down to Belmont and took the 2 horses out of Timmy's barn and put them in Barkley's barn. And that kind of set the stage for, 2 or 3 years later that he found Funny Cide for us. And as they say, the rest is history.
So Funny Cide broke his maiden by, 14 and a half lengths, something in that neighborhood?
Yeah, we were so disappointed that we couldn't get to run at Saratoga that summer of his 2-year-old year. Jose Santos got on him one morning and could not believe this horse. Told his agent, Mike Solito, that I don't care what happens. Don't let anybody else get on this horse. I want to be on this horse. And he bucked his shins a little bit, so we couldn't start at Saratoga. But Sunday after the Saratoga meet ended, went to Belmont. He had a 12 post and just showed, his brilliance. And then about 3 weeks later, the Bongard stake, the New York-bred stake, going 7 furlongs. He won that by probably 5-6 lengths and set a stakes record and had the co-highest Beyer speed figure that year. I think it was 101. And there's a lot of pressure on Barkley to take him to the Breeders' Cup. It happened to be in Arlington that year. But Barkley, being Barkley, said, you're asking an awful lot. You got to ship them for the first time. You got to run an open company the first time. You got to run 2 turns the first time. Let's go for that New York-bred race. It was a mile race, a Sleepy Hollow that came up the end of October. So we went in that, and he said, after we won the Bongard, he said, I think this horse might be good enough to hit the Derby trail. So let's try to do that.
At what point did the horse develop the following? I missed that year's Belmont Stakes because we had a graduation back in Lexington to attend. But I remember watching it on TV. I turned on the television and they had over 100,000 people there. And it rained the entire day. That's when I thought, these New York fans, they're really something, because they stood in the rain for hours and hours to see this horse.
That's right.
When did that start? When did he start getting that following?
Well, it started, when he won the Derby, and our crew came to the Derby in a school bus, and we beat a horse that was favored from a guy who had riches in the Middle East. So our story began to come out, and legions of people just jumped onto that and absolutely thought that was the neatest thing. So that's what happened. And then we had to do 2 school buses when we went to the Preakness. And by the time the Belmont came along, we had 4 school buses that took us. But, we were on a Today Show. I mean, Mayor Bloomberg had a party for us the night before the Belmont. I mean, there was just so many things that were going on. I mean, I was in a 21 club one day, and Leroy Neiman walks in, and somebody introduced us, and they shook hands, and he calls me the next day and said, I want to paint your horse. I mean, wow. This is just otherworldly stuff that went on. And, and then, Barkley, he became, kind of the curmudgeon, guy that, people love. I mean, so it all came together, and, he was just a great horse. And I tell everybody I'll go to my grave wondering what would have happened if it hadn't rained 5 inches that day at Belmont. I mean, taking nothing away from Empire Maker, because he obviously was a horse that was immensely talented, and you would think a mile and a half suited him better than Funny Cide. But you watch the race. I mean, at no point during that race was Funny Cide comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Looking beyond the Triple Crown, some of the remembrances that I read on social media, I remember one person in particular saying that following Funny Cide helped teach them about the races that went beyond the Triple Crown because he stuck around so long and danced so many different dances. I believe that was Nicole Miner. She's an excellent follow on Twitter. Tell me about the post Triple Crown career. What's a race or two that really stood out for you on Funny Cide in terms of sort of the later years of his career?
Well, the biggest one was the Grade 1 Jockey Gold Cup that he won as a 4-year-old, and you listen to Durkin's call of that race, and they get going around the third turn, the fourth turn, and Durkin makes a call, and Funny Cide is dropping back. Well, Jose was giving him a little breather, and then he came on. So, I mean, that was great. That got us, to the Breeders' Cup. Unfortunately, he didn't do well that day in Texas. So that one was special. The next one that was special was going up the Woodbine and winning, a stakes race up there on Canada Day. And Richie Migliori rode him up there that day. It was a 1.25 mile race. He went to the lead and said goodbye. So that was great. We had just a wonderful reception. The Woodbine people were fabulous to us. And then the last race, the Wadsworth at Finger Lakes with Ross Morton and his call. I'll just never forget it. It was the second biggest crowd that they ever had at Finger Lakes. Only opening day was bigger, and that ended up being his last race. We didn't really plan it that way, but following that race, we said, what more can we ask him to do? Let's go out a champion, and so we retired him. And Barkley said, well, I'd like to have him be my saddle pony. So we did that for about a year and 2 or 3 months, and he got a little sore, and then the horse park came calling, and we were just thrilled to death that he got an opportunity to get down there.
Was there one performance you thought was his best?
Preakness, no question. From a numbers standpoint, from a visual standpoint, I'll never forget. The race call, and I think Durkin said, "And the race is on." I mean, in a blink of an eye, the race was over. I mean, he was past piece rules in, a couple of seconds and opening up. And, and then Barkley's never forgiven him for winning by so much. And he says, if you hadn't done that, maybe we'd have won the Belmont. But, you can't second guess. And, it was validation. I don't know if you remember the story that came out from the writer in the Miami Herald about the buzzer. Yeah. And, Jose had something that he wanted to show that there was nothing in those hands. I mean, that was such a distraction. But, I mean, it was a lead story in the evening news that following Saturday after the Derby. And, at the end of the day, I'm told that it was the biggest non-jury First Amendment settlement in history.
Wow.
For Jose. Yeah.
Huh.
Well, good for him. And it was all over a writer misunderstanding what Jose had said. I think. I mean,
and he thought he saw something that he didn't see. I mean, there was a thing here, and he's thinking, "Oh, there's something there." Well,
yeah,
no, but it was. We were in the state capitol that Monday, being feted by the governor and both houses of the legislature, and I got a call in the morning from Bernie Heddle, the steward down there, and said, we've concluded our investigation. We're going to have a press conference at 1:00 saying that, there's absolutely nothing to this story. But it was not fun. I mean, we knew that, there was nothing to it, but still, I mean, there were a lot of doubters out there, and Jose's kids were getting harassed, and it was a little nasty for a couple of days anyway.
Mm-hmm. You spent a lot of time around the horse himself during his racing career, at the horse park afterward. Tell me a little bit about his personality. What was he like to hang around? What did he like? What did he not like?
He was tough. Even though a gelding, Robin and Barkley and I were talking about that the other morning when I delivered the news. And Robin said, I just can't imagine what he would have been like if he hadn't been a gelding. I mean, she was the only one that could get on him. I mean, when we first got him, and Barkley had a rider at Saratoga, and Robin was down in Delaware with a string of horses, and he called her up and said, "You got to come up here." He said, "You have to be riding this horse." And so that's what happened. And throughout his career, she was the one that was on him in the morning. Mm-hmm. He and at the horse park, even, I mean, he was tough for them. They loved him, but he had a mind of his own, and he acted on it. And I mean, he would be nippy and like that. Not a mean horse, I wouldn't say, but not a lovey-dovey horse. I've been around, like him and Tiz the Law are 180-degree opposites. I mean, Tiz the Law, you could go up to him and muzzle with him and everything like that. You would not do that with Funny Cide.
Hey, since you brought up Tiz the Law, what are you hearing about his offspring?
Well, we did something that we've never done. We bought a non-New York bred, a Kentucky bred weanling of Tiz the Law last year at the Fasig-Tipton sale in November. It's one of the Coolmore mares. So we, 25 of the partners that were involved, and Tiz said, we're going to get in on the ground floor. So we did that. Some in the sales, I think they've been doing quite well. There are 6 in the New York bred sale, and we will be there, hopefully being able to, get another 1 or 2. I mean, we're just very bullish on him. We think he has every reason to be an outstanding sire. Did more on the racetrack, really, than Constitution did, and look what Constitution has done. So we're hopeful that next summer we're going to be running a couple of Tiz babies at Saratoga.
Yeah, and I mean, he ran it too as well, so that's the kind of thing where they should come out running pretty early.
Well, he won the Champagne. I mean, that was a kind of, I guess you'd look at it, a gutsy call that Barkley and I made, going from a New York bred maiden special weight at Saratoga right into the deep water of the Champagne. But we just had a feeling that he was a special horse, and let's give it a try. And obviously it worked out.
So many smaller connections, get the one big horse and then that's the end for them. But to have another one come in the way of Tiz the Law, was there a sense of relief for that? Was there a sense of like, I can't believe this is happening again? Or is it just kind of like, cool, we're doing this again, let's go have a good time?
We can't believe it's happening again. I mean, for sure. And it was a COVID year. So, I mean, everything was upside down. I mean, we couldn't be at the Florida Derby. We couldn't be at the, Shorten Belmont. There were only 16 of us that got to see the Travers. So it was just a weird time. And, Barkley did a spectacular job of keeping him together, because after we won the Florida Derby, they announced, well, the Kentucky Derby is going to be in September. But we had no idea, what are they going to do with the Preakness? When's that going to be? What about the Belmont? So he had to keep them in training. Finally, they, announced that they were going to do a shortened Belmont. So it was, just a very, very different year, obviously, for everybody, but for horse racing. And, I think, unfortunately for us, he didn't win the Kentucky Derby. And I think had it been when it was supposed to be first Saturday in May, I think there's a really big likelihood that he would have won. And the saddest thing about that is I think that would have gotten Barkley into the Hall of Fame. And I know that there are reasons that he hasn't gotten there yet, but what he has been able to do with the horses that he has, I think, is Hall of Fame territory for me. And there are only, I think, 3 or 4 trainers that haven't won the Triple Crown that have won all 3 of the Triple Crown races. I think Doug O'Neill has won, Wayne Lucas, and there's one, I'm blanking on one. But, I mean, it's pretty rare territory. I mean, Todd Pletcher hasn't done it. He hadn't won the Preakness. So, I mean, when you look at, somebody like that that's won hundreds upon hundreds of stakes races, and here's Barkley Tagg, who's achieved something that he hasn't, it's pretty mind-boggling.
And I don't think trainers get enough credit when they can keep a horse like Funny Cide going year after year after year and against top competition. 6 years of keeping him going was
48 races.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jack, we appreciate you taking some time to talk about Funny Cide. We really thank you for sharing him, you and the Sackatoga partners sharing him with the public over the years. And I said the other day, maybe lightning will strike again, and you said it almost did with Tiz the Law, but maybe some of Tiz the Law's outspring will bring you back to Churchill Downs on the first Saturday in May.
You never know. I just want to put a plug in. Naira is going to honor Funny Cide the day after Travers on August 27th at the track. And my favorite bar in Saratoga, Ciro's, we're going to be having a major event there sometime in mid-August. There'll be a lot of media that will be blasting that out, but it's going to go back to our roots. After he won the Derby and Mary Lou Whitney's Birdtown won the Oaks that year, all of Saratoga turned out for a party at Ciro's. So we're going to end his celebration there and right where it started.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, thanks again, Jack, so much.
Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. And we'll see you all next week on the Friday Show.
Support award-winning independent horse industry journalism and become a Paulick Report Insider on Patreon. For as little as $5 a month, insiders get access to exclusive Q&As with Paulick Report staff, insight behind our editorial process, exclusive opinions and on-site analysis, Paulick Report merch, and more. This is not a paywall. The website you know and love will always be the same. But if you want more, and you want to make our coverage even better, visit patreon.com/Paulick Report and become a Paulick Report Insider today.